Okie doke. Let's go ahead and cover some of the news here. This last week, it was a fairly slow week in solar news. Duke Energy announced that they've just finished the largest install, the largest utility scale install in North Carolina, covering 195 acres, so 22.6 megawatts. Said that's enough to power 5,000 homes. I usually don't highlight all these big projects because there are a bunch of them every single week that are announced, but it was slow news day, so I threw it in. Massachusetts has announced that they're raising the net metering cap from 10 kilowatts to 25 kilowatts. So apparently in the past, if you had a system larger than 10 kilowatts, it wasn't qualifying for pure net metering. Now it's up to 25. So that should handle pretty much every residential install. Fronius has announced they're offering a solar design program. It's a free program that you can go in. It's called Solar Creator. And it's a tool. I went ahead before I talked about this. I went in, I logged in, I went ahead and walked through the process. I found it kind of confusing and not very intuitive. I was kind of surprised it didn't integrate in the graphic sizing model that so many of these do, where you get an image of the roof and you paint a square and then it populates it. It really just said you got to enter in what size array are you putting in place. And it struck me as kind of a tool that just directs you to which Fronius inverter you should buy. So, you know, I might be being unfair to it, but I wasn't impressed, but I didn't spend more than 10 minutes playing around with it. So maybe there are tools there I didn't find. There's a new model home project down in Fort Myers, Florida by the Pulte Group. And what was interesting here is they're doing these homes, but they're fully integrating them with the F-150 Lightning as part of the backup. And they're putting sun-run modules on the house. So they're basically building a subdivision where every home is lightning compatible with solar arrays. So that's kind of a first mention of that. We've talked about in past broadcasts here about integrating the Ford Lightning as your backup feature for your home. So it's interesting that the builders are getting into the mix and starting to do that from the get-go. And speaking of that kind of diversity or diversification, there's a Georgia roofing company called North Point Roofing Systems. And North Point Roofing has noted that they're going to be launching a solar branch. So that's kind of in the same vein that we're seeing manufacturers getting into solar. We're seeing roofing companies, we're seeing security systems. So a lot of diversification within the industry. This is a fairly large roofer. They say they have about 18,000 homes in Georgia. And then we've mentioned before the investigation with the Department of Commerce over the anti-dumping of Chinese modules, which are subject to tariff. So a lot of the manufacturing shifted to Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, Vietnam. Well, then the Department of Commerce announced a couple of weeks ago that they're beginning an investigation to see if the component pieces of these modules are being manufactured in China, then just simply shipped to these other nations and bypassing the tariffs. Well, within a week, apparently, CEA, which is the Solar Energy Industries Association, did a poll of 200 installation companies across the country here in the US, and 75% of them responded that within a week of the investigation beginning, their orders of panels had been either canceled or delayed by these companies operating out of those 4 countries. 90% of those people surveyed said that the investigation is having either a severe or a devastating impact on their business. So I think it's a lot. I know I have a friend in the electrical distribution industry, and I suspect they're just canceling orders because they don't know what the final price will be, depending on the tariffs, because if the tariff's going to add 25% to the cost or 50% or whatever, who knows? So of those surveyed, they said 2/3 of them said that they were putting half of their workforce on notice of perhaps losing their jobs. And 1/3 said their total workforce is on notice. And CEA estimated that if the investigation continues, it will result in 70,000 jobs lost, which represents about 1/3 of the solar workforce. So hard to tell if this is just people positioning themselves, trying to stop the investigation, or if this is a real thing. Currently, the supply chain constraints in 2021 resulted in 18% increase in cost of solar modules. That's the first increase really in the near-term history of solar. And about 80% of the US panels currently come from those 4 countries. So from Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So that could be a big thing. We'll have to keep our eye on the investigation. So that's the news I have this week. Anybody have anything they want to bring up for the good of the cause? I see Bill has joined us. So Bill, you usually have something that you're working on, or I'm still waiting on Daniel to join in. He said he'd be here at noon, but he's out in California. So got anything for us, Bill? It says you're not muted, but I'm not hearing you. Not going to get anything from you.
Well, while he's trying to get on, I was asked to give, this is Gabe, I was asked to give some input into a company called NewQuest. They are working on several solar projects in Louisiana and Mississippi, totaling about 390 megawatts. They're out seeking venture capital. So if anybody knows anything about them or their projects or their history, I appreciate your input.
Okay. All right. Anything interesting happening down in Texas, Gabe?
No, just really status quo. We're just continuing with what we do. We have 2 projects that we're pursuing for low-income housing, and working with Solar United Neighbors to help some lower-income families get solar on their house.
Okay, well, what I decided, I did a little bit of research into this company that Daniel is with. It's referred to as Villara, or VILLARA Energy Systems. And let me see if I can share the screen here. All right, hopefully you're seeing this. Move that over there so I can actually. What they're marketing here is a lithium titanate battery system, LTO, and one of the things that's remarkable about it is if you look at this spec sheet, it's a pretty small battery bank from capacity, 5.75 kilowatt hours of capacity. That compares to like the Ford Lightning, which has like a 93 kilowatt hour capacity, or the Tesla Powerwall that's what, 13, something like that. But if you look at the output for it, it's continuous power output of 10 kilowatts. So what these batteries are known for is very high amperage, high capacity output from a relatively small battery. So lithium titanate, one of the things he was promoting when I was speaking with him was around air conditioners. You know, how when an air conditioner kicks on, you're going to get that power surge. And most of these battery systems simply can't handle that. So it sounds like their market niche is kind of for short-term battery capacity where they might be wanting to back up the entire house for several hours as opposed to several days. The round trip efficiency is really good, clearly. And then some of the other advantages, I wanted to see if, and if Daniel, if you join us while I'm talking here, just interrupt me because I'm giving your talk. I haven't. One of the advantages with this kind of architecture, this kind of battery, is very long life. In fact, this battery is warranted for 20 years under their, that's their marketing on it. They do say in some of the other articles I read that the cycle count is around 20,000 cycles as opposed to 2,000 cycles for a typical lithium ion battery. So that gives a lot of lifetime to this battery. They also will permit very rapid charging and discharging of the battery. There's a lot less risk of thermal runaway. So some of the issues around batteries, exploding or catching on fire when they're damaged is apparently minimized. I don't think it goes away, but it's much less with this type of architecture. And they can operate at very low temperatures, which was one of those issues that we discussed with batteries in the past, is that, this battery is supposed to have up to 80% capacity when operating at minus 30 degrees Celsius. Now, in their specs, they don't really talk about charging. With a typical lithium ion battery, they will not charge below freezing, which is very problematic. They will still discharge to a certain extent. And this one apparently discharges quite well. But Daniel was telling me that these will charge below freezing, which is going to be a big deal if we have to store these batteries outside in colder temperatures. So that struck me as one of the major selling points. Not quite sure, has anyone run into issues with battery backup systems that simply did not meet the current capacities within your system? Gonna go ahead and stop the share on that. So nobody working with a lithium ion battery backup system in our group here today? No. So I could see that I've run into it with some of my solar generators, where I've hooked it up to a well pump or something. And when the pump kicks on, the surge is sometimes 8 or 9 times the listed amperage of the motor. And it immediately just throws the inverter into a squealing fit and stops it dead in its tracks. So I could see the battery could be an issue there. But other than that, I think it seems like I was hoping to get some pricing input from Daniel today, but it looks like he's on California time and we're going to be done before he joins us. So does anybody else have anything to add? Because I was sort of leaving the time for him. So nobody has. All right. Okay, well, let's just call this one quits, and it'll be a short meeting. So anyway, talk to you later. See you next week. Bye-bye.